So here we are then, the first edition of the Seven Figure Club, and it's been a great chance for me. I came up with the idea of the Seven Figure Club because when I was looking and talking through some of the people that I know have been incredibly successful, I thought, what's the best way to bring some of their knowledge through into the discussions that we have in the Growth Academy? And it's always great when you hear of success stories and you know the people involved in those success stories to be able to bring their stories to life. So that's what I wanted to do. And the first introduction is to the conversation I had with Duane Jackson. So I got to know Duane probably around about 7 or 8 years ago when he was the MD of Kashflow. Kashflow was an accounting system, a software, an online-based accounting system that we interfaced to at InTouch. And I got to know Duane from that. And was really, really pleased to hear when he sold the business to Iris Accounting around some 2-3 years ago. So I reached out to Duane, talked to him, was very kind enough to go to his new house in Brighton. I can assure you, I've been there, I've seen the cars in the drive. He's definitely part of the Seven Figure Club, but it's fantastic to gain from Duane some of the ideas and thoughts he's had. So let's introduce you to Duane and the first Seven Figure Club podcast, where we talk to Duane Jackson, ex-CEO of Kashflow, about what he's done to become a member of the Seven Figure Club. Hi, welcome to the first edition of the Seven Figure Club. My name is James White, I'm the founder of InTouch, and I'm lucky enough to be in the presence of Duane Jackson here today, who I'll let introduce himself in a moment, but great to be able to chat to Duane, and for Duane to share some of his thoughts, ideas and views on how he's made the success he did of Kashflow. So over to, do you want to introduce yourself, Duane, just to those on the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So I started a company called Kashflow with a K around 2004, 2005, and we were one of the first software as a service businesses in the UK, focused on SMEs, and grew that over, I guess, about 8 years through to an exit in 2013.
Fantastic. And obviously what we'll do over the course of the podcast is we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff here. But I was going to say, what made you start Kashflow? What made you sort of go into that sort of product at the start?
So I knew nothing about accounting and never wanted to know anything about accounting. What I did want to know how to do was to invoice my customers. So I was a one-man web developer charging by the hour. And when I looked at the various software sent out my invoices, it's a very different world to where we are now. There was no Free Agent, Xero, and some of the other, and even the Sage products were a lot better than they were. Yeah. Back then it was Sage and QuickBooks. They were designed for accountants. They were expensive. They were clunky. So I knocked something together for myself to send out invoices. Spoke to other small businesses to say, well, what are you guys using? Because I wanted them to recommend a product to me. And they all had the same problem. They're all using Word and Excel. So eventually, it took me longer than it should do. Eventually, I realised I should be selling this product. Yeah. And Kashflow grew from there. So it started as an invoice and sort and became a fully fledged accounting package.
But one of the things you said that was really interesting is you identified a problem. And I guess, do you think that, one of the things about, obviously the focus on this, the podcast about Seven Figure Club is to get to that success. Do you think a lot of businesses now don't start enough with the problem and actually they start off trying to create something that there's not a problem for? Do you think that the fact that there was a need for that and the people that had a problem, there was a big driver for you?
Yeah, I think the main point for it was, and it's a line that I've nicked from somebody else, I can't remember who, is that it was a painkiller, not a vitamin. It wasn't something that's nice to have, that just helps you out a bit. It's something that you need in your life. Yeah. And the fact that people are legally required to keep accounts helps. Yeah. But yeah, it's the fact that it was something that actually solved a real problem, not something that made life a bit nicer or easier.
I love that. It's a great. I love that.
It's great.
It has to use a painkiller. And in terms of when you were building Kashflow and when you started to sort of start to see, if you like, people take your painkiller and start to see the results of it. Is that what? Because how did you, we talked a little bit earlier on before we started the podcast about how you got momentum, but was that what, sort of made you think, wow, I can make this into something when people start saying, I love this?
Yeah, so I never went into it with the view to make millions of pounds. It was always, well, this seemed like a good idea and it's easier to make a couple of quid selling a product off the webpage than it is to sell my time by the hour. And early on, a lot of the first customers, so now there's a lot written about this and there's lots you can read out there, and it's, what they call it now is you should do stuff early on that doesn't scale. So early on, I'd go out to networking events and talk to other SMEs and sell them on using Kashflow. And we were getting 15 quid a month. So it's not something you couldn't grow a big business doing it that way. But that helped early on to get the first customers in. It helped me to see what the objections were, what people liked about it, what people didn't like about it. So then use that knowledge to build it further. And we got to the point where we were getting thousands of trialists every month directly via the website with very little effort. But early on, yeah, it's face to face.
When you were sort of like starting up and you're the sort of, the only person doing this, I guess sort of, when did you sort of, what was that point where I guess maybe the 1,000 when you thought, hey, I've got something here that could really be quite, that could put me into a place that I want to be with my family for the rest of my life?
So it was about a year, maybe 2 years from when the product was released. And bear in mind that it was a side project. I still had the core development stuff. So what was really paying the bills was me selling my time by the hour. Yeah. We had this little software product on the side that was growing nicely. And what really opened my eyes up to the potential of it was when someone out of the blue offered me £1 million to buy the company.
Really? I didn't realise that.
Yeah, and it threw me. And I said, it's not for sale, of course. And he said, the cliche, of course it's for sale. It's just a matter of how much. So how much do you want? So
what sort of revenue figures were you able to have this?
We were in less than 20 grand a month.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
So he asked me to talk him through the figures. And he said, all right, I'll give you 2 million. I thought, oh, crap. So I said, well, if you're serious, then I'll go away and think about it and get back to you. And I went and spoke to my mentor, and who later became my chairman, Lord Young, about it. And he made me sit down and do some projections. He said, look, this is what Michael, the guy that's offering to buy the company, would have done. So you can see if you carry on growing how you are, you can see where this goes in the next couple of years. And that was kind of the moment I realised, actually, I could make a good few quid out of this.
It must be quite scary, though, the thought of, because they talk a lot about, you read stories about people have had that situation, but it must be quite a weird feeling, though, to have someone saying, here's £2 million pounds, and you think, well, actually, I could do a lot of things with that. There's a lot of things my family could do and whatever.
Exactly.
Else. To make that decision to say no, it's very brave at the start, isn't it?
I mean, it's scary to walk away from that, but it was helped by, so Lord Young was an incredibly supportive chairman over the years, but this was very early on. And he said to me, look, why would you even want to take that offer? I said, well, because it's 2 million quid. Isn't it obvious? There's 2 million reasons why I should take it. He said, well, okay, well, what would you do with the money? I said, well, I've got some debts that I've built up. We got some double glazing in last year and I'm still paying 20% interest. So there's enough debts that I could deal with paying off to start with. And he said, look, if you really want to sell, so he was a shareholder at this point as well. He said, if you really want to sell, I'll help you get the deal done. And if he wants to buy my shares as well, great. If he doesn't, great. Whatever's going to work to get the deal done. But I want to give you an alternative. Sell him to go away and I'll give you 100k. You pay me back as and when we do sell. So that made it a lot easier. So I took his money as a 0% loan to be repaid when we did sell the company, and told the acquirer to naff off. But he was the ex-chairman of Sage. So then it somehow landed in the media that the ex-chairman of Sage was trying to buy us.
And that gave, I guess, that gave you not just the fact that someone's going to offer the money, but the fact that someone like a big company like Sage is going to do it must have given you that real fillip. Just think, hey, we got something real special here.
Yeah, I mean, he was not anything to do with Sage at that point. He'd long left, and it might have been me that leaked it to the media, made sure it was out there. But it really helped to raise our profile and for us to be seen by potential customers as an interesting company and one we should look at, and also other future potential acquirers.
And you talked about your, Lord Young there, and I know, from reading and knowing your story as Kashflow, that Lord Young's been a big factor in your, in the mentor. But, do you think that's a lot of things that a lot of small businesses don't do, is get a mentor in early? And do you think it was, something that you'd provide advice to companies now? Is it something you think is important for businesses?
Yeah, very much. I mean, you're so tied up in a day-to-day business that you need someone that can understands enough about your business. They've not got to ask a million questions to help you with your problems, but it's distanced enough so that they can take a big picture view of it. The problem is there are a lot of, let's politely call them professional mentors out there that will come and mentor you for X thousands of pounds a month. The problem is the mentors that are going to be good for your business are ones that have already done very well and aren't interested in making a couple of grand a month off the back of it. They might want equity. But yeah, these professional mentors where their experience seems to be in growing a business, providing mentoring services as opposed to any real business that's relevant. Yeah. So it's hard to find that right mentor.
So how did you find Lord Young? How did you guys sort of come together?
It's a fairly long, convoluted story, but the short version is he was a chairman of a charity that gave me some office space at a discounted rate, and we met there. He liked what he saw and offered to put some money in. So that's the short version.
But I guess getting someone like that who had such, massive, not just political experience, but business experience, and it must have given you a real feel good as well to think that someone like that's backing you and believing in you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to have someone when you're starting a business and you're at that stage, you're very early on, and you're not sure what you're doing. You're not sure how well it's going to go. So to have someone like that that's believing you, giving you support, encouragement, and telling you you're not crazy, is real helpful to have.
And you said there about you're not sure what you're doing. I mean, it's the challenge for every business owner, I guess, isn't it? Is because and I certainly know myself. You make plenty of mistakes on the way. Was there any mistakes you look back on with fondness in the early years and think, bloody hell, why did I do that? And you think you learn from at the time that you think other people should learn from.
Yeah, very quick to hire people early on. So there's all these cliches out there, and they're cliches for a reason because they're true. So the hire slow, fire fast thing makes a lot of sense. You should take a hell of a lot of time on choosing the right person to hire. But yeah, if you do make a mistake, get rid of them bloody quickly. And that was something that I was really bad at early on, was on both sides. So hiring too quickly and taking way too long to get rid of people that they just weren't going to work. And I guess that's part of that natural human tendency to avoid confrontation and whatever else. But yeah, I kept a few people around a lot longer than I should have done, I think.
It is a difficult thing, isn't it? Because like you say, sometimes you're in business and you want it to work. It's that good intention. You want someone to be successful. And you're conscious they've got a family and they've got...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the worst part of running a business is firing people. It's absolutely horrible, but it needs to be done.
Yeah, and I guess it's a difficult thing to do, like you say, but if you don't do it, you're only... I guess...
if you don't do it, it's at your detriment, and also all the other people you have employed. If this one person you've hired and you're spending a lot of money on them and they're not actually helping you, are putting everyone else's jobs in jeopardy. And also it's not fair on the other people you've employed that are pretty good, working pretty hard, to have someone else there that's not up to their level, bringing the whole team down. And also your team will lose respect in you because they can see the guy's an idiot and they think, well, why can't you see he's an idiot? Well, maybe you're an idiot as well.
Yeah, interesting. When we talked to this year before, we talked about how Kashflow sort of grew this sort of fan base of people that love the product, and you were very early on. From what I know, you were very early on. You're proactive on social media and getting people to. Do you think that's something that obviously nowadays in 2016, we have businesses who've got social media accounts all the time, but was that sort of getting a tribe, if you like, of people to really love something that's key?
Yeah, but you've accidentally hit on the issue. There are a lot of businesses with Twitter accounts. And I remember having an argument with somebody once about, well, why are they tweeting as their business rather than tweeting as them individually? And he said he wanted people to engage with his corporate identity. Have you ever wanted to engage with a corporate identity? You don't. You want to speak to a human. People like people. So the Kashflow account on Twitter wasn't that active. Well, it was active, but it didn't have a lot of followers. It was my personal account that did, because people are more interested in people than a corporate brand. So I think it's a matter of being authentic and being a person, rather than just being a logo that's pumping out content.
And that's really interesting, actually. It's a really interesting point in terms of being able to be personable and people buy from people and stuff. And I guess that's also the difficult thing sometimes for business owners who maybe don't feel comfortable doing that sometimes, and maybe they're maybe not as confident or outgoing. But I guess how did you what was and you got any advice for people where you think who listening to this are thinking I'm not this sort of confident person, I don't write blogs, I don't know how to but to do it, is there any advice you
I'm not particularly. It's just when I'm behind a keyboard, it's a bit easier being a keyboard warrior, and actually even my public persona, if you like, back then, which kind of contradicts what I was saying about being authentic, was actually more of a caricature of me. So I can be a bit cocky occasionally, but not as bad as I appeared on my blogs or on Twitter. But you need to stand out from the crowd to be seen. And I think a lot of people are worried that they might offend people or whatever else if they're too honest or frank in terms of what they're doing. And that's fine if they want to never offend anyone, but you're going to struggle to grow many people around you or that kind of following. I think if you're very bland and neutral, I mean, it's not interesting.
It's really interesting you say this, because I was looking at there's people out there, and I don't know why I happened to come across Katie Hopkins' Twitter account the other day, and I remember you just look through most of the tweets and I thought wow, most of them were words. But that's actually interesting that you say, because it does create people, whether they argue, but at least they notice you.
It's interesting. You're of interest, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that have sort of known of me over the years that must think I'm a complete cock because of some of them. In fact, I know there are, because some of them have told me. But yeah, I guess that doesn't bother me. I have a thick skin about it, and the end result was it helped to really grow a business.
And it made a difference in terms of what you did and how you got, visibility for cash flow. Now, I remember I used to, still do, used to read your blogs and look at some of the stuff you've got there. And, is blogging something that you think was, again, another key thing that you encouraged businesses to do now, to profile themselves and to get that presence out?
So the world's changed a lot now. Back then it worked really well for us in terms of driving traffic, in terms of getting an audience. So lots of businesses that knew about us because of the blog, but they weren't yet using the software. But it meant that the name got in front of them. These days, it's very different with platforms like Medium and longer form stuff on Facebook. So I'm not sure how it works. You need a voice, and whether a self-hosted blog is a way to do that or not, I'm not sure.
Okay, interesting that you say that. But in terms of, when now you've sold Kashflow, and you're, thanks very much to you and your wife for putting me up, giving me lunch in your house. You've made some of the things you want to do. Is there anything you miss of, of being from where you were in Kashflow, which is 2 years ago now, I think. When
about 2.5 years ago.
What are the main things you missed, and what are the main things you think that you talk about sportsmen who retire, and I guess you're in the sort of case where you're a businessman that's not retired yet, you've still got lots to do, but what's the main things you miss about it?
I miss the team, actually. We built a really good team that were really focused, and we were very much on a mission. We knew what we were working on, we knew where we were going, and then to overnight go from having that team around me, from having personally a very clear mission in terms of what I was building with the business, very clear goals in terms of I'm going to make some serious money from selling it. So overnight, well, there's your money, off you go. And even some of my staff said, we ain't got laugh at your jokes anymore, you're not the CEO anymore. And they meant it as well. Kind of missed that whole sense of adventure, I guess, and camaraderie of it all.
Yeah, and I guess you still keep in contact with a lot of the guys.
Yeah, very much so.
And sort of still got that sort of Kashflow reunion sort of things.
So one of the guys who's since left and has moved on his. He's been looking for the next job for a while, and he's tried a few different things, and he's really happy where he is now. And he said the reason he's happy, he said it feels like the early days of Kashflow. That's always nice.
It must give you a lot of, that must give you a lot of satisfaction as well, as seeing that people really enjoyed the journey they went on with your company, and you made that happen. So when you tell me a bit about we talked initially about the fact that Lord Young gave you that money, but when the decision came to sort of sell to Iris at the time, tell me a bit more about the process of how it all came about, and actually that end point of when the deal was done and you thought, bloody hell, I've done this, I've made this happen.
So it's 2010 that I got to a point where I felt I couldn't take the company any further. I was really struggling to do what I wanted to do with the business, largely because I didn't have a good senior team around me. I was trying to do too much myself. So I actively tried to sell the business. Realised I couldn't, because of course anyone that buys it wants a good senior team. They know I'm not going to stick around too much longer after they've filled my pockets up. So gave up on that process and got focused on selling the business again. And it was a couple of years after that we then got the approach that ultimately became the offer that we sold. And I think it came about with the usual, let's have a coffee and a chat. I mean, coffee is always...
Did you approach them, or did they approach
They approached us, and which made it a lot easier to go from 2010 when I was actively trying to sell to being actually actively trying to bought. I mean, to be bought, it's very different power games, I guess, if you like, different balances of how things work in negotiation. And they made an offer, or an indicative offer, which was quite good. But by this point, I had a good team around me. We really knew where we were going. So I actually said, great, but it's not really the kind of offer we're after now, and I'm going to stick with the business for a bit longer. They were obviously keener than I thought, so the offer increased. And ultimately, we accepted it, went through the whole process of due diligence and came out at the end of it and got the deal done.
Great to hear that. And Ben, there's a great book I've read, Ben Horowitz, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And he said that when he sold his business, he had a figure in mind that he said, right, I'm not going below that figure. That's it. If they don't want to buy to that figure, then I'll wait till someone does. Were you like that with Kashflow? There was a figure you thought, right, I've got to be at this point?
Yeah, I kind of was. It's especially in 2010. So we hired an M&A firm, and I said to them, look, get me $5 million for the business and I'll be happy. And they ended up getting some offers that were around there, but there's so many strings attached and whatever else that they just weren't attractive. And then later on, in between that process in 2010 and ultimately selling, someone else came along and offered to buy it, I think $6.5 million. And my agreement with them was, if you move it by a penny, I'm not interested, but I'll walk away. because I know that's a lot of the tricks that they play, and that's exactly what they tried to do. They tried to knock a few $100,000 off, and I walked away from it.
Did you really?
Yeah,
what, she basically just left the meeting and said, no thanks, I'm not going to muck around.
Well, we're in the meeting, and we were 2 weeks from signing the sale and purchase agreement when we got the first look at this agreement, and my CFO that I brought in pointed out clause 6.3 that essentially meant they'll take back $400,000 or something like that as soon as the deal was done. And I said, well, what's all this about? And they tried to justify it, and I said, well, I'm not going to agree to it. And they said, well, if you don't agree to it, it's a showstopper. So I stood up and said, okay, let's stop the show. Opened the door and kicked them out of the office.
Really? What, and you actually squatted about your own office, basically?
Yeah. And this was their general counsel, so it's a big public Dutch firm. And it's their general counsel that's got a real air of authority that I don't think anyone has ever said no to him.
Really?
So, yeah, the look of shock on his face.
But that must have also given you a massive amount of confidence to be able to say, actually, do you know what? No, I'm not having it. You're going to do...
I don't think it gave me any sense of confidence. It gave me a sense of what the hell have I just done? And also, how do I go home and tell my wife and kids that actually, I said we're going to move into this big house. We're probably not for a little while.
What did she say? I guess
she's absolutely. I mean, she's supportive, and her view was that, well, you've said no to offers before, and actually what you've done in the past has ultimately turned out to be the right thing, regardless of how it looked at the time. So, yeah, and that actually made me believe a bit more in myself that actually, no, I have done the right thing. Because, of course, I'm having second thoughts, thinking, hang on, should I really have done that?
$400, is it?
Yeah.
But you talk about, but do you look back on your time at Kashflow and think there was anything that you did that were, obviously you think that was a mistake. I know I did that, and actually I shouldn't have done that. Was there anything you look back and think, I wish I hadn't done that? You can't change time, but you think that didn't help me.
So I already mentioned the hiring stuff and being too slow to fire people. There was some stuff on the product side of things. So early on, we thought we could charge for API access and try to sell that as a sort of get extra revenue from that. So we were way too slow to drop any sort of pricing around that. But no, nothing else jumps out as, well, that was a big mistake. I mean, there was lots of small mistakes, I'm sure, but I don't think there were too many huge mistakes.
But and in terms of sort of, from the customer base you built up, did you find any reaction when you sold Kashflow that customers, how did customers react to you on it? Were they because I remember we still use Kashflow ourselves here. I was really pleased because I love to see success happening that way. Was everyone in the same boat? Or
yeah, so a lot of our customers were people like you that are entrepreneurs themselves, and they understand the reality that actually you're
building a business and ultimately you're going to sell it one day. So actually a lot of it was like you being pleased, congratulatory emails and tweets. The ones that were a bit arsy about were the accountants, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that they're less entrepreneurial than CEOs of SME firms. And yeah, they were a little bit annoyed because they'd already had relationships with the company that was buying us because they were already servicing the accountancy market. And they're like, well, does that mean you're going to be putting your prices up? And yeah, all sorts of questions I didn't have the answer to.
Yeah.
But yeah, the core of our customers were really supportive on it all.
Brilliant. Okay, just checking we're recording okay here. Should be okay, hopefully. But all right, and in terms of that feeling when you sold and that feeling when you actually, as I say, got you looked in your bank account and you done it. How did that feel? What can you describe that sort of the feeling that you had? And I know you sort of sold, you had some partial sale before, but the moment you sort of signed on the dotted line, it was done. How did that feel?
So there were two very different things. So signing on the dotted line and the money coming in, there's a little bit of a gap between them. So sign on the dotted line, when people are nervous, they make jokes. So we're at Linklaters, big lawyer's office in London. We have Lord Young, our lawyers, the acquirers, their lawyers. And we had to hold a sort of a mini board meeting to agree this out. I was asked, do you agree to it? And I joked, yes, I was under duress. And yeah, you cannot say that. Can you please officially confirm that you were joking? And yeah, so being nervous around that whole thing didn't help too much. But yeah, we got it done within a couple of days. Yeah, the money coming in. Actually, it was kind of surreal, really, to see a big fat number in your bank account like that. I think it helped that. So I made my first million about 18 months prior to that. So I had some shares privately. So I think that gradually making money helped me not go crazy and buy loads of supercars or whatever.
So did you that evening go out and sort of go open a bottle of big champagne or whatever? Did you do something mad that day?
Yeah, actually, it was a bit of kind of underwhelming on the night that we signed because it was a long night and there was actually one signature left we need to get from one of my shareholders who wasn't around until the following day. So we hadn't technically closed until he turned up in the morning and put his pen to paper.
But you did it in the end and got it through. So now you're sort of, you're a member of the Seven Figure Club. What's the future hold for Duane Jackson now? Because obviously you're doing a few different things now. You've got a reporting platform of your own, and you've invested in a couple of other businesses. Where do you see the next few years being? Is there an appetite, like you say, to do something like Kashflow again, or have you done that and you just want to provide your advice and support to other businesses now?
So the advice I got when I sold was, look, take a year off and decide what it is you want to do. So I took a year off without doing too much, and I hadn't really thought of anything new to do. And then the advice was, don't worry, whatever it is will come along. We're now 2.5 years later, and I'm still not sure I found whatever the next big thing is. So I'm doing various bits and pieces. So I do a lot with the Prince's Trust. I gave a charity that helped me when I got started, so I gave them some money and have been actively involved with a lot of what they do. I'm also an ex-con, so I'm doing some stuff with the Ministry of Justice, going into prisons, teaching inmates the programme. And so there's a few bits and pieces going on, but there's no one big thing just yet.
Okay, cool. Well, and so I guess the final thing, so I really appreciate your time and coming to that. Is there anything that you think, just as advice or thoughts that you've got on, to business owners now, on to, that want to join the Seven Figure Club, that want to do what you've done and get that success? Is there anything that you think, actually, looking back, things to do that you give as advice to people in that respect?
Yeah, and it sounds really glib and cheesy, but you hear that it's all, no matter what the business, it's all about people, as opposed to whatever your product is or whatever else you're doing. It's all about the team. And it took me a long time to realise that, but it really is about having a really good, engaged team that can get stuff done, and then having a plan on how to get stuff done. So if 5 years ago you talked about company values and vision statements, I'd have laughed at you and thought you were an idiot. But ultimately realised how useful it is to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, all those cliches like it all being about the team are absolutely true. Yeah. So focus on growing a really good team with a plan, and empower your team to deliver that plan.
Fantastic. Well, Duane, I'd like to thank you very much. It's our first podcast on the Seven Figure Club, and I think it's been great to hear your wisdom, advice and thoughts, and I know that a lot of people that hopefully are going to listen to this are going to be really empowered by it. It's something we're doing in the Growth Academy InTouch to try and show people that actually there is, if you've got that plan and you put the right things in place, you can get that success. So I'd like to thank you firstly for being part of this, and for inviting me to your house and to basically share some of your secrets of success. So really
no problem. Look forward to it in the next shows.
Great stuff. Thanks, Duane. Cheers.
So there we have it. That was the first edition of the Seven Figure Club, and I hope you found that podcast really useful and really interesting. I was fascinated and loved spending some time with Duane, talking about what he's done and how he made things happen. And I think there were a number of things that I took from the conversation that I had with him that really stuck out to me. I take his point very much on what he said about hiring slow and firing fast, and I think that's an interesting thing for a lot of business owners to consider and think about in terms of the people they bring into their business. There's always a desire and want for everyone to bring resources in, but it's about bringing the right people in that can really match your culture and what you do as a business. And I also thought it was interesting to know about his, how he talked about how he picked a fight in some cases with a larger vendor as well, and how that's helped him gain credibility and coverage in the right respects. So lots of really great insights. Really grateful to Duane and his wife for their hospitality, and it was a fantastic couple of hours for me to try and do a brain dump from one of the most successful SaaS software as a service entrepreneurs in the UK over the last 10 years. So many thanks to Duane. Great introduction to the Seven Figure Club, and look forward to speaking to more people like Duane and bringing their experiences and values to you guys through the podcast itself.